Hi, my name is Jeff Anderson, and the study I'm going to tell you about today is Dance for Children with Autism. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the principal investigator, Dr. Rajuta Wilson, as well as Christina Tulin, Hannah Singer, Derek Pham, Nick Jackson, and Catherine Lord for their contributions to this study. First, I want to talk a little bit about organized physical activity, or OPA, which is structured physical activity supervised by an instructor. Previous research has suggested that this type of activity benefits physical health and well-being. However, there are challenges that autistic individuals may face to meaningfully participating in these programs. For example, motor differences can lead to difficulties in physical movement and mobility. Social differences may lead to reservations around peer interactions. And there's a general lack of access to adaptive OPA programs with educated coaches. To address some of these gaps, we employed a dance OPA program for a pilot intervention study. The dance classes are called the Expressive Movement Initiative, or EMI, at UCLA. And in these classes, dancers are paired one-to-one with a buddy throughout the course, and buddies receive education surrounding neurodevelopmental disability, neurodiversity, and how to adapt the course for individual dancers. The structure of the class is outlined on the right, containing a warm-up, across the floors series, a challenge exercise, a short break, followed by a skill of the week, a game, buddy time, and a cool down period. Every other week, buddy time took up the majority of the class to give dancers more one-on-one time with their buddy. For this intervention, participants were between 4 and 17 years of age and had a diagnosis of autism or a developmental disability. And due to the pandemic, dance classes were all held on Zoom. Both parents and participants completed online surveys for this study, and we measured motor skills, social communication, quality of life, adaptive skills, and physical activity level. These surveys were completed before and after a 10-week intervention period or 10 weeks of waiting. Participants were randomly assigned to either a treatment or control group, but both groups had the opportunity to complete the classes. Our analysis includes 41 participants with 24 active and 17 control. And what we found was the active group showed improvements in motor skills in both static and dynamic environments, while the control group did not. The change in dynamic movement reached significance, but not static movement. We also found improvements in social communication and life stress, but these did not reach significance. We measured motor skills with the Movement Assessment Battery for Children checklist, and on this measure, a reduction of score is considered an improvement. In the case of movement in a static environment, such as in a classroom setting, the active group had an average score of 11.22 in the pre-test and 10.07 in the post-test. Whereas the control group had very little change from 10.97 in the pre-test to 10.82 in the post-test. But again, neither of these changes reached significance. In the case of movement in a dynamic or unpredictable environment, such as catching a ball, the active group changed from an average score of 19.49 in the pretest to 16.25 in the post-test. This change was significant with a p-value of 0.05. Again, with the control group, we saw very little change from 18.62 in the pretest to 19.45 in the post-test, and this change did not reach significance. Overall, we found that a virtual dance intervention is feasible and accessible for autistic individuals, and there was high interest among families to participate in this program. Our results indicated a positive impact for motor skills, particularly in dynamic environments. And this was exciting for us because motor skills can impact other domains, such as engagement with the environment and physical health and well-being. As I mentioned previously, we did see a reduction in life stress in both groups that did not reach significance, but we believe that global changes related to the pandemic may have influenced life stress during the intervention. There were also several factors that may have limited the power of our results, such as a relatively small sample size of only 41 participants, And some participants did not complete all parts of the study, which led to missing data, particularly in the post-intervention time point. There were also pandemic-related changes, such as shifting the intervention from being in person to being virtual, which may have impacted the outcome of the study. And finally, we had a heterogeneous participant sample in terms of age and diagnoses, which led to variation in how some measures were completed. Moving forward, we plan to narrow criteria for age, language level, and diagnosis, and we are adding in-person behavioral and motor assessments. For now, the dance classes will remain on Zoom, although if circumstances permit, we would love to add in-person dance classes in a future cohort. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear about our study. I want to acknowledge that this study was funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration, and I would like to thank AIR-P and the Autistic Researcher Review Board for supporting the implementation of this study.